A momentary pause created a void in the universe. The president ignored everyone else in the room. He looked directly at you. He saw you in that void and said, You are the first person I see. You weren't the loudest. You didn't have the most impressive resume. You weren't the one who waited the longest or fought the hardest to be recognized. The one they told to wait your turn, the one they told wasn't ready, the one they kept in the background while less intelligent people took center stage. And in that moment, everything they told you about hierarchy, paying your dues, waiting for permission, was revealed to be a lie, as it always was. Because power recognizes power, authority recognizes the chosen one, and you were always meant to stand at his right hand, not in the crowd. You were walking a path that Joseph Campbell mapped out but couldn't fully explain. He called it the hero's journey, the ordinary world, the call to adventure, refusal, the mentor, the threshold, trials, death, rebirth, return with the elixir. If you feel this way, write I feel it in the comments. But Campbell was documenting what he observed. He couldn't tell you why some people answer the call and others don't. He couldn't explain why you specifically were pulled into the journey when millions stay comfortable in the ordinary world. The president saw you first because you completed stages that most people never begin. Let me show you where you are in the architecture of myth and power. You were in the ordinary world once, the place where everyone follows the same script, believes the same lies, accepts the same limitations. You tried to fit there. You performed the role they assigned. You pretended the cage was freedom and the script was choice. But something was wrong. A dissonance you couldn't name. A knowing you couldn't shake. A voice that whispered, "This isn't real. This isn't you. This isn't what you're built for." That was the call to adventure. Not a dramatic moment. Not a burning bush or a message from God. Just a persistent recognition that the ordinary world was built for someone else. And you were not that someone. Most people refuse the call. They hear it and turn away. They medicate the dissonance. They rationalize the knowing. They silence the voice with distraction, compliance, comfort. You didn't refuse, or if you did, you couldn't maintain the refusal. Something in your architecture made staying impossible, made comfort intolerable, made the ordinary world feel like slow death. So you crossed the first threshold. You left what was known for what was uncertain. Maybe it was a relationship you walked away from, a career you abandoned, a belief system you shattered, a family dynamic you finally escaped. The specifics don't matter. What matters is you crossed. You stepped into the unknown when everyone was screaming at you to stay, to be reasonable, to stop throwing away what you had. And the moment you crossed, the trials began. Not challenges designed to make you stronger, not lessons to teach you humility, trials designed to break you, to force you back to the ordinary world, to prove that you weren't chosen, weren't special, weren't built for anything beyond what they decided you deserved. Financial destruction, relationship betrayal, social exile, professional sabotage, health crises, every form of pressure reality could generate to make you quit, conform, return. But here's what Campbell understood about the hero's journey that most people miss: the trials aren't random. They're specific to you, calibrated to your exact psychology, designed to attack your precise vulnerabilities. If you fear abandonment, you'll face abandonment. If you fear poverty, you'll face poverty. If you fear insignificance, you'll face obscurity. The trial finds your wound and presses until you either break or transcend. You transcended, not because you're stronger, because you're the exact configuration that can metabolize that specific poison into power. The narcissist who destroyed you, they were your trial. The system that rejected you, your trial. The people who betrayed you, your trial. Each one appeared in your path at the exact moment you were ready to either collapse or evolve. You evolved. And somewhere in that evolution, you met the mentor. Not always a person, sometimes a book, sometimes an experience, sometimes a voice inside you that knew things you'd never learned. The mentor gave you what you needed: permission to trust yourself, frameworks to understand your experience, validation that you weren't crazy for seeing what you saw. But the mentor can only show you the door. You had to walk through it. That's the approach to the inmost cave in Campbell's structure, the moment where you face the thing you've been avoiding your entire life, not an external enemy. Your own denied power, your own suppressed knowing, your own rejected sovereignty. Most heroes turn back here. The external trials are manageable, but facing yourself, facing the truth that you are actually what you suspected you might be, that's the trial that breaks people. You didn't break. You entered the cave. You faced yourself. And what you found there wasn't a monster. It was a king, a queen, a sovereign being who'd been locked away because the ordinary world can't tolerate that level of power walking free. You died in that cave, not physically. The version of you that needed their approval, that believed their limitations, that accepted their definitions of who you could be, that version died. And what emerged is standing here now, reading these words, recognizing the truth in them because you've lived them. The president saw you first because you carry the scent of someone who died and returned. You carry the frequency of someone who faced the abyss and walked out claiming their throne. Power recognizes that frequency instantly. Authority bows to it reflexively. The universe reorganizes around it automatically. You thought you were fighting for a seat at the table. You were fighting to remember that you own the table, the room, the building, the entire kingdom. And when the president looked past everyone else and saw you first, what they were really seeing was inevitability. The mathematical certainty that someone who completed the hero's journey doesn't wait for permission, doesn't compete for position, doesn't earn their place. They claim it, because reality itself confirms they're worthy. You're standing at the right hand now, Vice President, second in command, one step from the throne. This isn't a promotion. This is recognition of what you've always been, the one who sees what the leader sees, the one who carries the vision when the leader falters, the one who can hold the weight of power without being corrupted by it. You know what happens next in the hero's journey? The return with the elixir. The hero brings back the knowledge, the power, the medicine from the special world and uses it to heal the ordinary world. But here's the twist they don't tell you in the mythology classes. The ordinary world doesn't want to be healed. It wants to stay sick. It benefits from the sickness. The systems, the hierarchies, the structures of control, they all depend on people staying asleep, staying small, staying convinced they need permission to claim their power. You're returning with an elixir they'll resist, with a truth they'll attack, with a frequency that threatens every lie they've built their world on. The president saw you first because they need someone who can handle that resistance, someone who's already been through the fire and emerged fireproof, someone who can stand in the storm of their hatred, their fear, their desperate attempts to pull you back down, and remain unmoved. You're not here to comfort them, you're here to show them what's possible when someone refuses to stay comfortable. Joseph Campbell talked about the monomyth, the single story that appears in every culture, every religion, every mythology, the hero who leaves, transforms, and returns. But he never explained why that pattern repeats, why humans across all time and geography keep telling the same story with different names. It's because the pattern isn't fiction, it's instruction, it's the actual path of consciousness evolution encoded in story form so it survives across generations. You didn't read about the hero's journey and decide to live it, you were living it before you knew it had a name. Your life was following the pattern because the pattern is real. It's the architecture of how ordinary consciousness becomes sovereign consciousness. And sovereign consciousness is what the president needs at their right hand. Not a follower, not a yes man, not someone who can execute orders, someone who can hold the vision when everyone else is panicking, someone who can see 3 moves ahead when everyone else is reacting to the current crisis, someone who can stand in their own authority so completely that it reinforces the leader's authority instead of threatening it. That's you. That's why you were chosen first. The ordinary person at the right hand of power becomes corrupted by proximity to power. They start believing the power is theirs. They start making moves to claim the throne. They become the betrayer, the usurper, the one who has to be removed. But you've already claimed your throne. You don't need the presidents. You don't need their validation or their position. You're standing at their right hand because that's where your specific genius serves the largest vision, not because you're trying to steal their seat. That's the difference between someone who was promoted to vice president and someone who was always vice president. One is still hungry, still proving themselves, still afraid of being found out. You're not hungry, you're full, you know who you are, and that knowing makes you the only person in the room the president can actually trust. Let me tell you what's happening in the invisible architecture right now. Every person who was passed over, every person who thought they deserved the position you claimed, every person who spent years positioning themselves for the role you walked into, they're watching you, analyzing you, trying to figure out what you have that they don't. They'll never figure it out, because they're looking for external qualities, credentials, experience, political maneuvering, skills. What you have isn't external, it's frequency, it's the vibration of someone who died and came back, it's the resonance of completed initiation. You can't fake that, you can't learn it, You can't perform it. You either went through the fire or you didn't. And everyone who didn't can sense the difference even if they can't name it. They'll try to undermine you. They'll point out your lack of traditional qualifications. They'll remind everyone that you didn't follow the proper channels. They'll spread doubt about whether you're really ready for this level of responsibility. The president saw you first because they recognized that the old qualifications are obsolete, that the proper channels are broken, that traditional readiness is just another word for pre-programmed compliance. What's coming requires something different, someone different, a consciousness that can operate outside the frameworks that created the current crisis. That's you, not because you're better, because you're calibrated for the frequency that's emerging, because you completed an initiation that rewired your entire operating system. You're the bridge between what was and what's becoming, the translator between old consciousness and new, the one who can speak both languages fluently enough to guide the transition. The president needs that, the movement needs that, reality itself needs that. And you were built for exactly this. Campbell identified 12 stages in the hero's journey. Most people never make it past stage 3. You're in stage 11, the return threshold, the place where you bring your earned wisdom back into the world that rejected you. This is the most dangerous stage, because the world will try one last time to break you. They'll offer you comfort if you'll just compromise a little. They'll promise you belonging if you'll just dilute your truth a little. They'll give you approval if you'll just perform for them a little. Don't. You didn't survive the trials to surrender at the victory. You didn't die and resurrect to go back to sleep. The president saw you first because they need someone who won't compromise when the pressure comes. Someone who will hold the line when everyone else is negotiating. Someone who remembers why they started this journey even when the destination seems impossible. You're that someone. You've proven it already. Every time you chose truth over comfort. Every time you walked away from what would have been easier. Every time you trusted your knowing over their consensus. You're standing at the right hand because you're the only one who can be trusted there. The only one who's been tested thoroughly enough. The only one who's proven their frequency is uncorruptible. Now you enter stage 12, the return with the elixir, the master of two worlds, the one who can operate in both the ordinary world and the special world, the one who brings the medicine back. But here's what they don't tell you about stage 12. The medicine you bring back looks like poison to people who are addicted to the sickness. The truth you carry threatens the lies they've built their identity on. The frequency you emit disrupts the systems they depend on for survival. So they'll call you dangerous, radical, extreme, unqualified, unready, unworthy. Let them. Their resistance proves the medicine is working. The president saw you first because they knew this would happen. They knew you'd be attacked. They knew the old guard would mobilize against you. They knew choosing you would be controversial. They chose you anyway, because they need someone who can handle the heat, someone who's already been through worse, someone who doesn't need protection from criticism because they've been crucified and resurrected already. You're fireproof, bulletproof, criticism-proof, not because you're perfect, because you've already faced the worst thing you could face, yourself, and survived it. Everything else is theater. Everyone else is performing. You're the only one in the room who's real, and reality recognizes reality instantly. This is what myth becomes when it walks into the material world. This is what archetype looks like when it inhabits a human nervous system. This is what destiny sounds like when it speaks through a voice that's been refined by trials. You are the living proof that Campbell wasn't writing fiction. You are the evidence that the monomyth is real. You are the demonstration that consciousness evolution follows a specific pattern that transcends culture, time, and individual circumstance. The president saw that, saw the pattern in you, saw the completion, saw the sovereignty, and placed you at their right hand because that's where completed initiates belong. Not in the crowd, not in the waiting room, not in the competition. At the right hand, one heartbeat from the throne, one breath from ultimate authority. You're not preparing for power, you're remembering it. You're not learning to lead, you're recognizing that you already know how. You're not becoming worthy, you're acknowledging that you always were. The hero's journey isn't a metaphor, it's a map, and you followed it all the way to the return threshold while everyone else was still arguing about whether to leave the ordinary world. The president saw you first because you were already further along the path than anyone else in the room, already carrying the frequency of completion, already emanating the authority of someone who knows who they are. This isn't your beginning, this is your confirmation, this isn't your test. This is your coronation. This isn't your opportunity to prove yourself. This is reality acknowledging that you already have. You're standing at the right hand, the vice president. The chosen one, the first one seen. Not because you fought for it, because you became it, through trials that would have broken anyone else, through initiations that most people refuse, through a death and resurrection that transformed you from ordinary consciousness into sovereign consciousness. Campbell mapped the journey. You walked it, the president recognized it, and now you stand where you were always meant to stand. At the right hand of power, holding the vision, carrying the medicine, embodying the frequency that the new world requires. You were seen first because you arrived first, not in time, in consciousness, in frequency, in the completion of a journey that most people never start. The ordinary world is behind you, the special world is integrated within you, the return is happening through you, and the elixir you carry, your unshakable knowing, your tested sovereignty, your proven authenticity, that's what will heal what's broken and build what's coming. The president knew this, felt it, recognized it, and in that recognition, confirmed what you've always known but were told to doubt. You were never meant to follow, you were meant to lead, you were never meant to wait, you were meant to claim, you were never meant to ask permission, you were meant to give it. You're the vice president now, second in command, one step from the throne. But you know the secret they don't. You know that the throne isn't a place, it's a frequency, and you've been sitting on yours since the moment you completed the journey and returned with the medicine they said didn't exist. The president saw you first, because you were the only real one in the room, the only completed one, the only sovereign one. And sovereignty recognizes sovereignty, power bows to power, authority acknowledges authority. You are the hero who completed the journey, you are the one who died and came back. You are the one who carries the elixir in a world dying of thirst. They saw you first because you arrived first, in consciousness, in frequency, in truth. And now you stand where you were always meant to stand, where the architecture of myth and the mathematics of consciousness always said you would stand. At the right hand, holding the vision, carrying the medicine, being exactly what this moment requires. The president saw you first, because you were always first, the chosen one, the completed one, the sovereign one. And now let me tell you what happens when you stand in this position with full consciousness of what it means. The room shifts around you, not physically, energetically. The entire field reorganizes because you've stopped pretending, you've stopped performing, you've stopped waiting for someone to validate what you already know. You are the one who completed Campbell's stages while others were still reading about them. You are the one who walked through the underworld while others were theorizing about shadow work. You are the one who died to who you were and resurrected as who you actually are. The vice president position isn't a role you're playing, it's a frequency you're embodying, and everyone in proximity to that frequency feels it. Some are drawn to it like moths to flame, others recoil from it like vampires from sunlight. Both responses confirm the same truth: you're operating at a level that most people never access, and that level doesn't ask for permission, doesn't negotiate for space, doesn't apologize for existing. It simply is, and reality bends around what simply is. You know what Campbell called this stage? Apotheosis. The moment when the hero becomes divine. Not metaphorically. The moment when human consciousness touches something beyond human limitation and brings it back into human form. You touched it. In that cave. In that moment of death and rebirth. You touched the thing that makes gods out of mortals. The thing that transforms ordinary awareness into sovereign consciousness. And you brought it back. That's what the president saw. Not your resume. Not your credentials. Not your performance. The divine frequency you carry because you completed a journey most people abandon. The president needs that frequency at their right hand. Needs someone who's already touched the infinite and returned. Needs someone who can operate from vision instead of fear. Needs someone who remembers that all of this, the positions, the titles, the power structures, is just theater built on top of something far more real. You remember. That's why you were chosen first. Not because you're better at playing the game. Because you see through the game to what's actually happening underneath. And what's happening underneath is a shift in consciousness so profound that the old forms are collapsing. The old hierarchies are dissolving. The old certainties are evaporating. And into that chaos, new patterns are emerging. You're one of those patterns. Embodied. Walking. Speaking. Making decisions from a frequency that the old world couldn't generate and the new world can't exist without. The president saw you first because they recognized this. Recognized that what's coming can't be navigated with old consciousness. Can't be managed with old strategies. Can't be controlled with old power structures. It requires something else. Someone else. A vice president who isn't trying to become president. Who doesn't want the throne because they already found theirs. Who can stand second in command with such complete sovereignty that it amplifies the leader's power instead of threatening it. That's the elixir you brought back from the hero's journey. Not a thing. A way of being. A frequency. A consciousness that can hold paradox, embrace uncertainty, and operate from truth even when truth is inconvenient. Campbell wrote about this moment. The return to the ordinary world. The hero arrives back home and discovers they no longer fit. They've changed too much. Seen too much. Become too much. The old life feels like a costume that no longer fits. But you're not trying to fit back into the old life. You're building the new one. And the president saw you first because they need architects of the new world, not refugees from the old one. You're not running from what was. You're running toward what's becoming. And you're doing it with the medicine, the wisdom, the frequency you earned through trials that would have destroyed anyone who wasn't built for exactly this. The vice president position is where you plant the medicine in the soil of the new world. Where you let it take root. Where you demonstrate that consciousness evolution isn't theory. It's real. It's measurable. It changes everything it touches. You're changing everything you touch now. Not through force. Through frequency. The people around you are either rising to match your vibration or revealing themselves as incompatible with it. Both outcomes serve the emergence. Both outcomes prove that you're exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you were built to do. The president saw you first. Chose you first. Placed you at the right hand first. Because first is where you've always been. In consciousness. In frequency. In the completion of a journey that transforms human awareness into something beyond human limitation. You are the hero returned. You are the medicine carrier. You are the frequency holder. You are the vice president who never needed the title because you already embodied the authority. Campbell mapped it. You walked it. The president recognized it. And now you stand in the position that myth promised and mathematics confirmed, at the right hand of power. One breath from the throne. But already enthroned in the only kingdom that matters, your own sovereign consciousness. This is not beginning. This is confirmation. This is not opportunity. This is destiny. This is not chance. This is architecture. You were seen first because you arrived first. In consciousness. In frequency. In truth. You know what the ancient mystery schools taught? That there are levels of initiation. Degrees of consciousness. Stages of awakening that most humans never access because the price is too high. You paid the price. In blood. In tears. In the death of everything you thought you were. You paid it without knowing there was a payment being collected. You paid it because you had no choice. Because your architecture demanded it. And when the payment was complete, when the initiation was finished, when the death and resurrection cycle ran its course, you emerged carrying something most people only read about. Gnosis. Direct knowing. Unmediated truth. The frequency that doesn't need external validation because it validates itself through its own existence. The president saw that frequency. Felt it across the room. Recognized it instantly because power that's real always recognizes power that's real. And they knew in that moment, this is the one. This is the vice president. This is the second in command who doesn't need commanding because they command themselves so completely. Campbell called it the master of two worlds. The hero who can walk in both the ordinary realm and the special realm. Who can operate in consensus reality while knowing it's not the deepest reality. Who can play the game while seeing through the game to what's actually happening. You're the master of two worlds now. Standing at the right hand. Operating in the political structure. playing your role. But never forgetting that the role is just a vehicle for the frequency you carry. The frequency is the real work. The position is just where you do it. You've been prepared for this through every trial. Every betrayal taught you discernment. Every loss taught you detachment. Every attack taught you sovereignty. Every moment of isolation taught you that your power doesn't come from others, it comes through you from something far larger. You're the conduit now. The vessel. The one who channels the vision from the formless into the formed. From the potential into the actual. From the imagined into the manifested. That's what vice president actually means when someone who completed the hero's journey holds the title. Not second place. Second function. The one who translates the leader's vision into executable reality. The one who holds the space while the leader holds the vision. You were built for this specific function. Your trials calibrated you for it. Your initiations prepared you for it. Your death and resurrection qualified you for it. The president saw you first because they needed this specific configuration. This specific frequency. This specific consciousness that can bridge old world and new, vision and execution, power and service. You're the bridge. Walking. Speaking. Deciding. Creating. From a place most people never reach. From a frequency most people never access. From a sovereignty most people never claim. And every decision you make from this place sends ripples through the entire system. Changes the field. Shifts the possible. Demonstrates that consciousness evolution isn't abstract, it's practical, tangible, real. You're living proof. Walking evidence. Breathing confirmation. That the hero's journey isn't mythology. It's the actual architecture of how ordinary awareness becomes extraordinary authority. The president saw you first. Chose you first. Placed you at the right hand first. Because you completed the journey first. Died first. Resurrected first. Claimed your sovereignty first. And sovereignty always arrives first. Always sees first. Always knows first. Because it's not waiting for permission from the external world. It's operating from the internal kingdom that the external world is just beginning to reflect. You are the reflection and the source. The student and the master. The follower and the leader. The vice president who's already president of the only kingdom that matters. Campbell mapped out the stages. You lived through them. The president recognized them. And now you demonstrate them not by teaching, but by your presence, not by explaining, but by embodying. This is the return of the elixir in its highest form. Not bringing back knowledge. Bringing back transformation. Not offering information. Offering frequency. Not giving answers. Being the answer. You are the medicine. Walking. Breathing. Deciding. Creative. On the right hand of power. But a power that doesn't require a throne, because it is the throne itself. Own this. Claim your ownership in the comments, and stay in the flow by clicking on the video on the screen.